If you didn't catch it a minute ago, my name's Ellie. We just met though, so it's cool. Hi. I wasn't going to start with this, but I feel like I'm supposed to start with this. I felt like the Holy Spirit was very clear. I felt like Matt said something very profound just a minute ago. And this song, like Waymaker, there's no coincidence. I didn't talk to the band really, like I didn't help them plan the songs. They picked them out themselves, what they were going to say. But I feel like that is so like on point with what some of you guys are walking in here feeling tonight. Like some of you guys have like a lot of shame and stuff going on in your life regarding past relationships and things that are maybe happening. And so I just want to offer this as a space tonight to leave whatever that is here. And when you walk out that door tonight, to be a brand new person and to step into something new. God is a way maker. And if you feel like that's totally impossible, it's not. God can change something in a second. So if you feel like a heavy burden is on you right now with that, like leave it here tonight. Just leave it with God. If that's the only thing that you get out of tonight, like that is so invaluable. And God can change whatever you're going through right now. So just ask him for his help and he will do that for you. I also want to preface this panel by saying that there are so many directions that we could have taken this panel in. Relationships are so multifaceted. There are so many different layers to them. We could spend hours talking about relationships and not cover everything. So I recognize that there are some of you guys in this room, since we are like catered towards anybody and any like in all 20s and 30s, like married, single, dating, engaged. Like those are a lot of different seasons. So we're not going to cover everything. So take what you can from tonight. Eat the fish, leave the bones, as they say, that old saying. So do that. But I really feel like you are going to get something from this panel because they're amazing. And if nothing else, you'll get something out of your group time later. I feel very confident in that. But I brought these people here tonight because they're awesome, first of all, every single one of them. But they are people, like I'm very picky about who I put on the stage because if I don't see them walking it out in their life, I'm not gonna bring somebody on the stage that isn't walking something out. So these guys, like I've heard people talk about them and their relationships and the way they handle relationships, or I have personally seen it in their lives. So I brought each one of them up here because they have very diverse opinions and they have something awesome to offer every single one of you guys. So definitely tune in to what they have to say because it's awesome. So Julie, I feel like could you open us up in prayer and pray for maybe anybody that needs to leave stuff here tonight?
Turn this on. Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Lord, thank you so much for being the author of relationships and for gifting us the gift of relationships with one another and with you. So bless this conversation and amen.
All right, so we're going to kick this off by you guys going down the line and saying your name. And I want you to say where you're from, too, and your relationship status. Yes.
Sick. So I actually am sick, so bear with my voice. I don't sound this nasally and annoying usually, I hope. My name's Brandon Garland. I am the student ministry director at Forest Hill Waxhaw. And my relationship status is extremely excited because I am dating somebody who lives in Canada who happens to be visiting me right now and is on the front row. So I'm extra grateful tonight to be here. Thank you.
Hey, yes. I'm Carmen Bartlett. I am also sick. So I'm sorry for my old lady. I got my tea, got some cough drops. The healthy ones are down here. They're married, so, that might tell you something. Just kidding. Maybe, who knows? What's the science on that? Oh, wow, it's really getting away from me. Took some Dayquil. All right. Carmen Bartlett. I am the Big Kids director here at South Park, and I'm single, and I'm from here mostly. Great. Keith?
Sorry. My name's Keith Burney. The love.
Crowd over there, Keith.
Yeah, no doubt. I am from Colorado, grew up in Colorado. I am married, been married for 7 years.
I'm Julie Sale, and I'm from the Fort Mill campus. I'm on the connection team there, and I have a confession that I am older than all of y'all. So I
Not
have
by a
been,
lot, Julie. Not by a lot, though. Yeah.
enough. I have a son who's 20, so he could be in this group. But anyway, I have 5 kids. I've been married for, I think, 22 years. And where am I from? Kind of all over. Not like Colorado. I'm from Colorado. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina.
Awesome.
I'm Sanchez Fair. I am from Greenville, South Carolina as well. Been married 5 years, and I'm just a lone stranger. I'm just along for the ride.
He is not.
Oh, I have 2 kids, 2 boys. They are the best. 2 years old, Micah, and a 2-month-old Julian. Yeah, they're real cute. I'll show pictures later.
Sanchez is being modest. He worked here for a while, but he is now planting a church. So, okay, remind me the name of it. You just told me like literally 5 seconds ago and the other day.
Multiply Church. We meet in the Brace YMCA in Matthews.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So let's get this party started. Blaine, can we have the first question? So we're just going to go through, we identified, just to give you guys an idea of what we're doing here. We kind of identified like the questions some of you guys had submitted on Facebook and stuff, that there were like these 2 categories of questions that y'all had a lot of questions regarding. The first one is how to date and be in a relationship well as a Christian. And then the second kind of area was boundaries in a relationship, and all the things that entails. So I kind of like picked out questions that I thought that these people were really living out. And so I'm going to kind of point it towards each one of them. And then we're just going to chime in with like whatever bonus stuff everybody else wants to add in. So, okay, so the first question is, this one is for you, Brandon. What are your thoughts about online dating? We're just starting off the game with the taboo questions, right? You know?
Y'all threw a hard one to the sick dude. That's cool. Well, I have to start by saying I can't say anything too negative because I met my girlfriend online. Now, not a traditional online quote unquote dating way. We met kind of through Instagram. We had a mutual friend. So I have to preface by saying I would be undermining my entire relationship to say anything too negative about online dating. But I think if I had to summarize kind of a helpful, if I had to give my if someone came up to me and said, Brandon, I'm thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? I'd preface by saying I met my girl online. But I think what I would say is online dating is a tool, and a tool is only as good as the person whose hand that it's in. So I can buy a real nice hammer, but if I don't know how to swing it, it's not gonna work so good.
That'll preach, man.
And so if I wanna use online dating, but I'm an immature, needy person, I'm just saying that's gonna work about as well as dating and finding someone in in a coffee shop, which is not very well. So I would say online dating is a tool. I will also say, as much as it has to do with the person who's holding the tool, I think you have to keep in mind there are different types of online dating services. So I would say your intentions need to be in the right place going into it. If you're considering it, if you're in need of constant, maybe if your genuine thought is, I want to sign up for this service so I can feel validated, probably not a good reason. However, if you're at a healthy place, but you're about to hop into a platform of people that are not in a healthy place, don't be surprised if you meet an unhealthy person. And I don't mean unhealthy sick, I mean unhealthy cannot handle relationships, is a narcissistic liar, and cannot actually function in a relationship well.
You just went there.
So I'm not gonna call any names, Tinder, out specifically that are negative that I wouldn't recommend for most people, but I would say if you lay down with dogs, don't be surprised if you get up with fleas. And there are many dating platforms that I know of people who have met people on that are positive. Some of them, though, that are negative, maybe avoid them and be wise with knowing how you internally are before you hit complete on the profile. Because if you go to a great site or a bad site, but you're not healthy, online dating and in-person dating won't go very well. So I think it's a tool, but you gotta be in the right place to use it.
That's a good word. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Okay, we have another question about this, but I want to hear what you guys think too. Oh, Sanchez, I know you got something. He's over there smiling.
I really wrestle with it, honestly, because I think you're right. It is a tool and it can be helpful. if used responsibly. But I think like I'm more okay with the way you went about it, in the sense of you had a mutual friend to kind of vet this person out. And so there was like something safe and reliable, versus the way most online dating is used nowadays is for validation. Sexting is a real thing, and we don't need to get more explicit about that, but it can be unhealthy to me. And then for me, just wrestling through like, man, like, am I really putting my trust in God's timing for my life? Or am I inviting Satan into my life and into my space to tempt me with some things that I don't need to see and be a part of? That could be a little bit legalistic and old-fashioned, but I think I value relationships so much. But I have seen God work through it. I've got family members that met their spouses through an online service, but it was a strenuous vetting process that took place. So again, just exercise and practice mindfulness and be responsible.
Good advice. Okay, so this next one is for you, Carmen. How do you online date well?
All right, that's a great question. I actually, I created a Hinge profile today because I didn't want to be a fraud up here. Plus, I just got back from Paris and I had a lot of cute pictures. So why not? You know what I mean?
Post them up,
I looked really good while I was there, so that's happening. But I have a lot or some experience with online dating. I'll create a profile, be on it for however amount of time, and then maybe delete it and then go back and forth and go through all the different, now Hinge is the thing, you know. It used to be Bumble back when I was young. But how do you online date well? That's a really good question. I think you have to kind of define what success is to you. I think that's like the main thing to do, because you are going to meet a lot of tools on online dating. And so, am I allowed to say that? Okay, good. Thanks, Brandon. All right. So,
analogy, right?
but you have to define what success is to you, because I think a lot of times relationships, to be successful, you need to be married. And because like that's like the end, right? The goal is to be married. And so successful relationship is marriage. And so, but that means that you might only have one successful relationship in your life, maybe two, you know? But I doubt that's the case for lots of us in this room. So I would say that relationships in a lot of degrees are a real gift. And so even just like looking back on your past, just because a relationship didn't end in marriage or didn't end in forever or didn't end in a proposal does not mean it was not a success. So how do you online date well? You have to really sift through all the garbage and there's goodness out there too. I've actually met some really quality people on there, and we dated, and you know, still single, so that's the life. But has been really successful. Here's a little practical dating tip, is whenever you go on a date online, just like go in with the intention of having a really good time, like for yourself. Like go on a date with somebody, you can immediately know that they are not the person for you. That's happened to me many times. But have a good time with that person. God created that person. Those people are crazy. You will get really good stories. So the more you have a good time, the more you'll be able to appreciate that person, and the more you can talk to your friends about it. And just like, and also it really helps you from getting like downcast about being like, oh, this 6 foot tall guy with great hair, we just didn't hit it off. Instead, you could be like, man, that dude was nuts. He quoted movies the whole time. I have some really good stories. Find me later. I can share some with you that's not appropriate from the stage. Yes.
She does.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, dating for me has been like such a good learning experience. Like every single date or person that I've been in a relationship with has taught me like so much about myself and what I like about myself and what I like about other people and what I need in somebody. So it's been really invaluable for me to go through those situations.
But it's definitely like an unknown, sorry, I'm still talking, but it's like definitely like an unknown territory, because like there was a time when it's like, when online dating wasn't a thing, and so people just had to have courage and ask you out in person. And now we're in between, and now we have some online dating where people get to hide behind a picture of themselves online, and then they can build up the courage to be whoever they want to be to you on social media. And so it's like, I think it's really difficult because I definitely feel caught between those two things because we're not the way it was and we're not the way that it's going to be. And so it's hard to maneuver those two fields, which how do you online date well? I think we won't really know that until really 20 years from now. You know what I mean?
I think you did a great job of offering advice, though. Does anybody else, we're kind of exiting the online situation, so.
Did any of you guys online date at all?
Julie? No?
No, okay.
Really?
Interesting.
What are your thoughts on it? Anyone? Okay.
AIM.
Oh, AIM, yes.
MySpace totally counts, 100%.
Yes.
Yahoo Messenger.
I think we passed notes in class. I think that's as close.
Wait, what are those? Just kidding.
Oh, man. Okay, so we will move along to the next question. I promise we're going to get to the married people in a minute. But the next question is for Brandon. Again, how do you find contentment in every season? And especially in this culture where, you are constantly moving from next thing to next thing to next thing, and we're, moving at such a rapid pace because of technology.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even just the pace. I think it's the fact that the platforms we have let us have an innumerable amount of people to be jealous of at any given time. Mm-hmm. So I can find all my, for me, what I would say is I've found that contentment never comes from a circumstance or a season, because whatever season I'm in, there's always someone a season ahead. There's always someone that has something else that I don't want. So I'm 22, so I'm right towards the bottom of the age range in this room, but I spent roughly 21 and a half years of my life being discontent, being single. And what I would say is, what I had to kind of find out is that your level of contentment always carries over. So if I'm a discontent single person, I will find a way to be discontent as a dating person.
That's good. If
I am discontent as an engaged person, I do and a kiss that is hopefully appropriate in less than 5 seconds, because we do not want to see y'all make out on your wedding day. Will not make me happy either. And I've just found that my contentment carries over. I do want to share a quick story. I remember I was in Bible college, and one thing, can anyone who's ever been to Bible college or seminary raise their hand? I don't know if there's many of you in here, but okay, for my 7 people in the room, I'll let you guys in on a secret who have been to normal schools that are probably better in this way. Being at Bible college, you feel like you are a spawn of Satan if you haven't found someone by the spring semester of your first year. And
spring by spring, right?
We talk about predestination, it's a theology thing, but you feel like you're not predestined to get married if you haven't met someone in a month. And I honestly spent my 2 years at the school that I was at feeling like I didn't really, I was not content at all. And I remember there was this one specific night, literally no joke, every single one of my friends, I had it was the first semester, so I'd only made 6, 7, 8 friends, but all of them were either on a date with somebody, or at the very least, they were dating someone. And I was like, do I smell bad? What's going on? Some of these people are weirdos and they got somebody already. And I remember I was walking around my school. It was a nice evening, and I was walking around and I was like, God, I guess it's cool and all that I get to walk around and talk to you. I'm a Bible college student. I guess I should like to talk to you and stuff, but I would so much rather be walking around with a pretty girl holding my hand, doing something like that. And I so remember God speaking to me, and he didn't speak out loud. He spoke louder than out loud, in my heart. And he said, if you don't learn to be content with just me, you'll never be content with somebody else. And if you can learn, my favorite food, I'm not even a steak person, but there's no better food than a really good steak. And if you start eating Ruth's Chris steak, $4 a pound steak from Harris Teeter isn't very good. And every person in the world is the $4 steak when you've been with God. And I remember God said so clearly on my heart, if you don't learn how to value my presence in this season, it doesn't matter if I bring the best person into your life, you will ultimately lose, because if you don't have me as a priority over them, you're gonna end up putting them above me, and that's not actually good for you. So what I would say is you can't expect a relationship or the relationship going to the next level, or maybe you're married, now you have a kid, whatever it is, there's always a next thing. So if you can't find a way to say right now, here's what I would say is to learn that right now, God's favor is on your life, that you're in the middle of his plan if you're walking in his ways. Like, it's just not connected to your season or your circumstances. So for me, it's learning to say, and no joke, people always say this kind of crap, said this to me when I was single and I got so mad. They said, if you just find a way, and I'm not saying it's an equation, like be content and God brings you a person, but I'm just saying my experience is I spent 21 years discontent. I got to a place where I said, God, I'm trying to date somebody. I feel like you haven't called me to be single, but I'll be single right now and try to love you and be faithful in this moment. And when I wasn't looking for something desperately, God brought someone into my life. And I would just say, contentment attracts God's provision. And if you can learn to be content in your season, then when God leads you into your next season, you'll be able to stay content because contentment carries over. So I think that's what I would say to that.
And I think it's important to say too, like, it's not always like, oh, I'm content now, so God's gonna bring somebody.
Right.
Because that's like manipulating God,
Absolutely.
know, in a way. But it's like, it's always in God's timing. So it's like important for you to already be postured like that. And eventually, when it's right, it will happen. But I don't think like, as soon as you do, it always happens that way. I've heard of it happening that way a lot for a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Hasn't been the case for me, but maybe there's some other people, but so I see it both ways for sure. What about the rest of you guys? You got something to say on this? Married people?
What's the question again?
It's right up there. How do you find contentment in every season?
Yeah, for me, it's always helpful to reflect. To look back, and I think it's easy when you're in that moment to be frustrated with things, but when I look back, look over my life, I'm reminded of how far I've come. I'm reminded of what God has done. And then that gives me encouragement, excitement about the future. It's like, oh, if we're here now, what might God do? I mean, bit of a dreamer, but what might God do next? And so that keeps me content that I have hope. That the current situation, what's going on right now, isn't my final destination. That God is still at work. Like we just sang a song about He is still working, even when we don't feel like, even when we don't see it. That is true. And so I'm mindful of that. When I look back on my life and I see that, it gives me hope for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good word. And anybody else? Well, this next question is for Sanchez. So how do you date well / be in a relationship with someone from another culture or background or culture?
How do you date well? So I'm going to split this up into two questions. So how do you date well? Contentment's huge. And I think knowing your value and who you are in the Lord is extremely important. Even if that's a turnoff for some people, like stand your ground. Because I think for me, like after college, you're kind of in limbo because like all your close friends, they go away and then there's like nothing. And so knowing who you are is something that is very, very important because it's all you have at times. And so knowing who you are, knowing your value, knowing your worth, if that makes sense, I think those help you achieve the goal of dating well. Now, when it comes to dating or being in a relationship with someone of a different background and culture. Anybody want to guess why I got this question? So, let me just state the obvious. So, I say the three things I said up front because culture has shaped and created certain narratives about what types of people should be together. And so with me being in a blended relationship, one of the things that I put out there for my wife was, hey man, like if your parents aren't going to be cool with this, then like I know what God's called me to, and I know that hardship's a part of the plan. But because I know who I am, I'm not going to allow personal preferences to hinder or prevent me from remembering my purpose and who I am in God because I know my value. Does that make sense? And so, long story short, we didn't have an issue, and obviously 5 years later. But again, that identity piece, I can't stress it enough, and it seems really simple and cliche, but like you really think you know who you are, and then like you get married, and then you start to see who you really are, and it's just something completely different. But I think in this stage of life, dating well is about knowing who you are and knowing your value, surrendering, sacrificing, being selfless, thinking of others more than yourself. I mean, again, if you parallel like how to date well in the greatest commandment, love God and love your neighbor as yourself, you should be fine. It's pretty simple. But because of the individualistic culture we live in, and we live in our emotions and our feelings. And if somebody says something offensive, my feelings are hurt. Or if that girl or that guy didn't look at me or give me the attention I wanted, then we get like really sensitive. Well, that shows me that you're insecure and you don't know who you belong to. And if you understand who you belong to, and as Jonathan Scott says, if you know whose you are, you have nothing to worry about.
That's good. So I remember like, I guess it was maybe like a year and a half ago or so, maybe. I had a YouTube channel for like 15 seconds and I decided to interview people about this subject. So I interviewed Sanchez because we had like all these really long conversations about this kind of stuff. And so when I interviewed you, and then also the times before when we had talked, like you just always had like a really great opinion on those and a good take on those types of things.
Sorry, I want to add, this just kind of hit me. Maybe I feel led to say this. Like, I think like the whole interracial dating thing, like I'm just going to call it what it is. Like most people think it fails because of skin color, and that's just not true. You know what I'm saying? Because when we're talking about, because I mean, I really gave you the politically correct answer. Now I just got to be raw. All right, so.
Well, tell them what you just told me out there.
I know,
it was really
I know.
Good. It was super good.
You know, I'm trying to be mindful and respectful, but again, like,
you can leave it.
like my wife and I are different not because of our skin color. If anything, we're different because of our economic class and our culture that comes within that. Yeah. So like, for instance, I've had like rich redneck friends marry like, you know, South Park, South Charlotte girls, and they get a divorce and it not work out because they have different cultures. And so again, like if we're open-handed with the Lord and we're open-handed with who God may have for us, you'll be surprised because sometimes we miss out on people that are standing and sitting next to us just because they look differently or they may talk differently. But again, like we were just talking about the body of Christ, like sometimes God might be calling the arm to like kick it with the leg. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know what I'm saying? Like not all, it's cool to be, you know, have both arms, but like, just think about the diversity that's coming. Like in 2023 in America, there will not be a majority. And I'm adding to that with my beautiful babies, right? Like, but you know what I'm saying? That is great. But I would say like most people don't get in interracial relationships, especially millennials, because of how their parents raised them. Not because of conviction from the Lord. Yeah, don't tell your parents that. Yeah, that's tough. That's our parents' generation, right? Just to keep it real. And so I've dated all kinds of women. Not too many. I was really, really picky. Like I said, I knew my value. No, I understood my value. But you know, my wife was the first white girl I was able to date without it being an issue with my other girlfriends. I didn't have a bad breakup story. It was, hey, like, God didn't tell me that you were the one for my daughter because I'm black. Because you understand what I'm saying? So you feel the weight of that, but that's changing. So if you're open to it, it's cool. Like, I mean, we're all humans. We're all flawed. Black and white people that are married have the same issue as homogenous relationships. It's all beautiful in God's eyes as long as you're giving him the glory and as long as you remember who you are.
Yeah, that's good. Anybody else have anything to add to that? No. Okay, so Carmen, I believe this next question is for you, I think.
Yes, Ellie.
How do you maintain your happiness while being single?
Okay, well, I think it kind of echoes back to something that Brandon said, but ultimately, you guys have heard this before, and it's dumb and it's stupid, and sometimes it's not true, but being single is a gift. Ugh, right? But it truly, truly, truly is a gift because you're just allowed the freedom to like truly fall in love with yourself. And so that I think a lot of time is wasted in pursuit of falling in love with somebody else. But you guys, in your single status, you have time to get to know who you are and who God created you to be. And you guys, each one of you are so special and unique in the way that God made you. And there are things about you that you have yet to discover about yourself. And if you're too busy pursuing somebody else and finding the magic in them, you're gonna miss out on so much that God has created inside of you. So use that time to, you can do this when you're married too. It's just, your time is divided when you're in a relationship, but truly take time to invest in yourself and value yourself and decide what things you like and what things you want to pursue. And I'm going to share a metaphor that one of my best friends uses, and I love this, so I'm going to use it too. But she was telling me that it's sort of like you have a boat, right? You build this boat, you craft it, you sand it, you fix the sail when it tears, you swab the deck, maybe you personalize it, maybe you add some cannons, you know what I mean? You're with this boat all of the time, right? And you get to know it, you know how to maneuver it in the water. The more time you spend with it, the easier it becomes, and the more it becomes yours, right? And then when you're in a relationship, the idea isn't that you jump off of your ship that you just spent so much time crafting onto somebody else's ship. You stay on your ship. Somebody else will sail along beside you in their own ship that they've spent time crafting and perfecting and maneuvering in the water, and you sail along together. So I think the more that you can invest in your ship and crafting it and designing it, and God gave you that opportunity to know yourself, and the more you know yourself, the more you know God, the more you know God, the more you know yourself. So really take that time to craft your own boat, so that way when somebody else has come along, you can identify when somebody has not taken care of their ship, when you have been maintaining yours. So take care of yours, so then you can call it out when somebody else, comes along and there's, a little sailboat, you know what I mean?
That's so good.
That's it, I guess.
So good. Yeah. I've listened to this one video that Carl Lentz has kind of about the same exact thing, where he's just like, you run your race and like you just keep running it, and one day you'll like look beside you and you'll see somebody else that's just like running with you, like keeping up the same pace. And I just like really love that metaphor for the ship. Thank you for painting that beautiful picture for us, Carmen.
You're welcome.
Wow. So this next question is for Keith. So Keith, what are signs of an unhealthy relationship? Because I think it's important to note, even when two people that are both Christians are dating, it can still be really unhealthy
Facts.
and toxic. So what are signs of that? And also I think that as Christians, sometimes we have like crazy unfair expectations of people. So we're like, put the will of God on their life and on your relationship. And so, so speak into that.
No, that's good. And definitely Christians have unhealthy relationships, like facts. I think a sign that maybe there's something unhealthy is if you see the relationship is becoming an idol. Right? And what I mean by idol, like I don't mean like a shrine in the basement with like wooden things carved out. Like that's definitely a sign of a bad relationship. But when I say idol, think of it as something that you have put at the same level or even above God. Think of something that you find your identity in, your security, your hope in, something that you have deemed really, really important. That's a sign that it could be an idol. It's been said a lot, one of the ways to check and see if you have an idol in your life is to see how you spend your time and your money, right? To look over your calendar and look and see, hey, how am I and where am I spending my time may indicate how important something is for you. And the same thing for your bank account, right? If you pull out your phone, go through your phone, you may realize that Viva Chicken is an idol and that you are spending a lot of your time there, right? And so those are two ways you can check. I'd actually add a third to that. And I'd encourage you to reflect and think about your prayer time, right? Like if somebody was able to transcribe your prayers and then analyze them, what might that say? Would it be evident that you are a follower of Jesus or that you are a follower of someone else, right? And so I think looking at, and don't get me wrong, it is wise to pray over your relationships. It is wise to pray for wisdom. But if it's dominating your prayers, that may be a sign that things are unhealthy. I think as far as like expectations, what's fair, what's unfair, I think it's completely fair and game that somebody you're in a relationship with is caring for you and loving you the same way they love themselves. right? Like we're in this series now, Art of Neighboring, looking at the great commandment and love that neighbor as yourself. Like that's like minimum wage when it comes to relationships. That should be the standard for all people. So it's completely fair to be in a relationship and expect that. I think it's unfair if you are expecting someone to meet every wish, desire, even need, if we can be honest, right? Because we're not built for that. We don't have that capacity, right? Like I love my wife. And some of you know my wife, so you know why I love my wife. Like I love my wife and I know her well. But I don't know everything about her. I don't know all of her needs. And even if I did, I don't have the capability to meet all of them, right? I'm not all-knowing, nor am I all-powerful, but there is one who is. And so it's important for us to not expect the people we're in relationship with to feel things that only God can. If you're thinking your relationship is going to fulfill you, that is a mistake. If I can be real honest with you guys, sometimes I get frustrated with my wife, right? And I go up and pray to tell God about her. I go tell on my wife. Yeah, I'm telling on you. Yeah. And far, far too often, God is reminding me that you're frustrated with her because you neglected something in our relationship. You're looking for something in her that you can only get from me. And so I'm forcing my relationship, focusing on it because I've neglected to focus in on him. So it is completely unfair to have expectations that your relationship can fulfill you. I think God loves us too much to allow another relationship to do something that only he is designed to do.
Wow, that's good. Are y'all taking notes yet? Oh my gosh, that's so good.
I would like to follow up on that if you can have that relationship with God and with Jesus while you're dating and then while you're married, it sure makes having kids a lot easier. Because you can certainly have whatever relationship you have with your spouse, if you put them up in that idol status, you're going to do the same thing for your kids. And it's going to be damaging to your kids, and it's not going to be healthy for your marriage either. So,
that's good.
So fix it now.
That's so good. Does anybody else have? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you, or no, you want to go first? I was taught ladies first, so Carmen Bartlett, please.
Thank you, Brandon. This is just a quick little thing, but I would say, me being single and still have the opportunity to bail out of the relationship if it's unhealthy, which is, I would just say, like, listen to your gut. I like to think that Jesus lives in my heart, but the Holy Spirit lives in my gut. So listen to it, and like the more you can identify the Holy Spirit's voice, the more you can glean from him. He's like, God is all knowing, and if you ask him, he will give it to you, and that's a promise that we have in his word. So the more you can understand his voice, or more you can like listen to your intuition and that feeling in your gut when you're dating somebody and you're like, are you? And you're like, no. That question mark that you felt at the end there is the Holy Spirit giving you like this sign that like, hey, this guy, he's gaslighting you. Classic. So I would just say that, know the Lord's voice, get to know what the Holy Spirit sounds like for you. It's going to be different for everybody, but just like partner with Jesus. Don't neglect him inside of your relationship, because he will tell you all the things because he knows it,
Yeah, and real briefly, I would just say the greatest thing I have seen have a negative impact on relationships in people in my life and in my own is neediness. And there is a difference between like he touched on, there's a mutual like edification, but what I found is like God knows exactly how much provision he gave you to accomplish the purpose that he put in front of you. And if you have a person in your life who doesn't know how to sustain themselves in a relationship with God and as a human being, and you're having to pour out the provision God gave you for your calling in a relationship, you'll be using what God gave you to do what he created you to do to sustain a relationship that should, like, if someone needs you to have a relationship with God, that is unhealthy. Like if someone is in church or in the Bible or in prayer because of you, that is an unhealthy relationship. And if you are pouring out the provision God gave you for your purpose on a person who can't sustain themselves with Jesus, you'll actually end up trading in what God created you to do by pouring out the resources God gave you in an unhealthy way to a person. Yeah. That's what I got.
Yeah, it's all really good advice, guys. Gosh. So this next question is for you, Julie.
Okay.
Let me read it. So, what do you think about the whole subject of being like unequally yoked, as we say in the church? You know, dating a non-Christian.
First of all, I think that term feels like really an old-fashioned word.
Does,
like,
it
what
does.
is unyoked? It's like two cows together. But what it really means is dating or marrying somebody that doesn't follow Jesus. And, you know, God is the author of relationship. He created us to have relationship with us. Jesus died for us so that we could have relationship with God. So I think that we should probably listen to God's advice about relationships. And he says that it's best for us to marry somebody and be in relationship with somebody who is following Jesus. And just like any gift that God gives us, we can abuse it in a couple ways. So we can either ignore it because it's kind of boring, or it doesn't seem like it's feasible, or like nobody we know knows Jesus, and so it's just easier to date whoever's around us. Or we can overcomplicate it and be like, elevate our expectations so that somebody needs to be super spiritual and look a certain way for you to date them. And so I think both of those are wrong. That somebody who's following Jesus, who's fun to be around, that you enjoy life with, I think that's what God's doing. It's a gift for us to use. And marriage is hard, and relationships are hard. And if you're walking through life and you're paying bills and having jobs or losing jobs or having kids, there's a lot of things that complicate relationships. And if you don't have Jesus as your center, it can be really hard. So I think it's just it's a kind gift from God to give us these rules that are really just gifts for us.
Yeah. I think too, it's important to think about it in a way of like, even you can both be Christians, but like still not be at the same place, and like, or not have the same calling. So like, I've dated some really nice, awesome guys that are like really great Christians, but it's like we could tell that our lives are going in two totally different directions down the road. But I think for me, like you guys want to hear my opinion, I'm just going to share it. But I think for me, the thing that really is difficult for me, and I dated a non-Christian guy, and I've dated a couple, and for me, it was just like the baseline standard for morality, like to get really deep, is just totally different. Like I have the Bible, and that is my standard for morality and the things that I do. Baseline, like the Bible. And for somebody that's not a Christian, like besides the law of the land, like their morality is very relative. And so I think about down the road, I'm like, this key is sticky because we probably don't have the same views on a lot of things, like even the little things, you know? So that one always has scared me of like, okay, so you're not a Christian? Well, where's your standard for how you're living your life? Because I know mine's the Bible. And so if I'm dating somebody that's that's a Christian, I know that at least, hopefully, at the bare minimum, we get along in the bare bones of the Bible, you know? So anyways, does anybody else have anything else to add to this question? Yeah.
Hey, it's me again. So yeah, I wrestle with this one because like the whole missionary dating thing, you know what I'm saying? And like, I have a lot of friends that have attempted to do that, and I'm sure there is a very small percentage of people that have done that, but it's never really, really worked. In theory, you know, barely Christian marriages work nowadays with the percentage and the rate of divorce, right? So I think I also like to think of this question like you are what you eat and you are what you attract kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so depending upon where you are spiritually, you're going to attract those kinds of people in essence, and not always. That's, you know, there are some exceptions, I will say, but again, that identity piece, like, man, like dare to have people level up to your level rather than you level down, because every time you level down, you compromise the gift that you are to God. And that's just me. That worked for me. Maybe that was why I was single for some years, because people were like, man, you want a Holly Berry and a Megan Good and a Mother Teresa, you know, in one body. You know what I'm saying? Like, you wanted this perfect figure. No, it wasn't about that for me. It was, I know what God called me to. And I know what mission and purpose he has for me, and that's not to be compromised. So
That's good.
That's good.
Sanchez, you want to keep the mic and answer this next one? What are deal breakers? I know that's a loaded question. So
okay, before I answer this question, I want to show you 2 heartbreakers. Do we have the pictures? There's my 2-year-old. He insisted on putting his jacket on today, and this is my 2-month-old. But again, it's one of those things, like I go to school, I take them to school every day, and everybody just focuses on how attractive they are. And like, they're going to be heartbreakers, and I'm like, man, why are you speaking that over my children?
I said that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why? Who are you? Don't say that about my boys. I thought really long and hard and deeply about this.
I like that.
Because, okay, take it or leave it. What are deal breakers? For me, it's someone that isn't in the stage or content in the stage and the season of their life as we talked about. Why do I say this? I think we have to be more mindful and careful, and we need to exercise wisdom when assessing the people that we're wanting to interact with. We need to assess their baggage. Because like if you don't divinely divorce some of your baggage, that stuff is going to come into marriage. And I counsel a lot of people, and particularly men who have a very sexually active past, and they did not divorce their past. And so for me, you want to give grace and for people to progress in their journey with the Lord, but you need to be honest with yourself, and that you need to ask, are they content with the season of singleness? Can they function with or without me? Right? I think we addressed that. That was my answer to that. Can they function with or without me? Am I complimenting who they are? Where are they on their spiritual journey? And have they dealt with some of the more intimate things that will come out and come up over time? I don't think we talk about that enough in church. But again, I'm willing to bet my finger and my whole life savings of $25 that a lot of divorces end because people have not divinely divorced some of their past issues. That's separate from trauma. Trauma is a different thing. I'm more explicitly talking about sexual past. Is that too R-rated for you guys? Oh, you're 20s and 30s, grow up. And the second thing, faith journey. Faith journey. Again, like I was single for 2.5 years before I met my wife, and the amount of times and people pressuring me to lower my standards, to date a girl, and well, so-and-so, she's Miss so-and-so, and so-and-so, she's a model for this. Oh, so-and-so sings for this group. I could give 2 flying flips about what she does. I want to know what her heart's about and the God she serves. And here's the thing, again, like I said earlier, it's a reflection of who you are. If you're not radically on fire for Jesus, and if he's not the center of everything, it's going to be hard for you to attract that kind of person, because that person knows who they are. And again, I get grace and I get progress and that sort of thing. And I'm the serious guy on the panel, okay? Like, this is why we have conversations at my house for 5 hours, right? So, but I say this because I love relationships. I love God's intent for relationships. But more importantly, I love who you are and who God has created you to be. And you are divinely created in his image, and it's not worth compromising.
That's good.
Know your value. Do not compromise your faith.
Yeah.
Exercise discernment. And if you don't have discernment, guess what? You probably have a friend that will tell you like it is. Don't avoid hanging out with that friend. You get that opinionated friend to tell you how it is. And if you need one of those, my Instagram is @SanchezFair. I will gladly give my opinion.
He will tell you the truth too. So trust me, he's told me a few times. Okay, so these last 2 questions are for you two, Keith and Julie. So basically these last 2 questions all have to do with time and stuff. So how do you balance it all? So Julie, I want you to take the first part and just, guys, Julie has 5 kids. a great marriage. She works a full-time job. Her kids are in like all kinds of sports. She comes to work with her hair done and clothes on, and I just don't know how you do it all. I'm just like always surprised. And she's very graceful about all of it. So I'm like, how do you do that? It's like magic. Tell us, Julie.
I feel like there's nothing I can say that would follow that up. There's no such thing, I think, as real time balance, just balancing time. It just depends on the phase of life that you're in, for me anyway, and just kind of accepting where I am in life and adjusting my expectations. There was a point where we were doing 40 hours of practice a week for different kids. I had a daughter that was competitive gymnastics, and anyway, we ended up doing 40 hours of like traveling and carpool to all these different things, and we literally had no time for family dinner, which that was a real value for us as a family. And so we had to readjust, and we realized, we have breakfast, so we had family breakfast instead. So I think it's just rearranging your expectations, and the things that you're doing now as dating or young married or single, that will change. That will change when you get a new job, or that will change when you start dating or you get married. So your expectations will change and your time management will change. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and the value of the relationship is the most important thing. So maybe you don't get your workout in like you always used to do, or maybe you don't make the perfect meal like you always used to do, but you're spending time with the people that matter to you. To me, that's time management, and of course, making that time to spend with God. So for me, that looks like getting up at 4:30, sometimes 5, just because that time's precious, and I really enjoy my hot cup of coffee and my podcast or whatever I'm reading before the chaos begins. I need that. That's my me time.
That's so good, yeah. And then Keith. So how do you balance like keeping your own identity and taking care of yourself while like lending your lives to the people that you love, like your wife and your kids? So
for sure. Yeah, it's a good question. I think often when there's an imbalance in this area, the imbalance is I've put in a lot in my relationship and I've forgotten who I am, right? I think even kind of going back to the earlier question, if your relationship becomes an idol, you find your identity in that relationship and you put your all in, and then you're at a point where you're like, who am I, right? I think an example of that often we see is like with empty nesters. They, with great intentions, have invested in their family and their kids, and then the kids leave and they're like, who am I? And so my encouragement at this stage and every stage is to get in the habit of prayerfully seeking the Lord and saying, God, who did you make me to be? Like what are my skill sets? What are my giftings? What do I enjoy? Like, who did you make me to be? And sometimes that's a tough question to answer. To Sanchez's point, find some friends or some people who know you well and ask them to speak into it as well. And then take that information and pray over it and discern if it's accurate or not. But then what I would say, because again, if you're in a relationship, you want it to work and maintain your identity, those things that you enjoy, those things that you've been gifted in, do them with the person that you're in a relationship with, right? And obviously that takes some compromise. Like my wife and I, we don't have the same hobbies. We don't watch the same Netflix shows. Like there's some compromise. But the intentionality is, hey, let's do some things together, things that you enjoy, things that I enjoy, and also have the freedom to do things by ourselves, right? It's not this like codependency where we have to do everything together. There's freedom to go and do what we enjoy. I'd also say like be intentional about retreating from time to time. To get away with you and the Lord, reflect. Who am I? What have you given me? What have you made me for? And that's a value. That's a value to the relationship when you know that and you can bring that and add it to the relationship.
Yeah, I started doing like silent retreats last year for the first time in my life, which is hard for me because I like to talk, but they were like game changers for me. So, okay, so last question for all of you guys because we've gone over, but speed, lightning round, 30 to 20 seconds. If you could go back to your former self, like in a past time, and give yourself a piece of relationship or dating advice, what would you tell yourself? Yeah, let's just go down the line.
Yep, I would say and I would say this to y'all too, like you're enough. And I think if I'm being totally honest, I don't know if I even fully love myself in a different season because I thought I needed to do this or be this or all this, but I realized that if I don't love me, then no one else's love is gonna be enough. And if I live by your compliments and validation, I'll die by the lack of the same. So I would just want to encourage myself and maybe some people in this room, like, if you can't learn to love yourself now, having someone tell you you're awesome won't change it. So I would want to remind myself, if Jesus paid the ultimate price in the universe, which is the shedding of his blood for me, I don't need any, I'm good. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm enough right now where I am in my season. I am enough. And I wish I would have knew that a little bit more when I was younger.
I would say take a lot of risks, get to know rejection really well, shake its hand, make it your friend, and I think that's it, basically. Yeah, right?
That's good.
Okay,
wow.
Great. Take a risk. Oh, and then also, I'm also going to say this. I think, especially when it comes to relationships, you can't depend on somebody else making your story incredible. And that's what I mean by taking risks. Like, you are ridiculously in charge of making your life an incredible story. So take the risk to make your life exactly the way that you want it to be, and don't depend on somebody else to make that happen for you. Thank you.
Yes. That's good.
Well said. I'd say spend time developing the areas in your life that are vital in a relationship, right? Like, you can't expect to get in a relationship and all of a sudden turn on patience and turn on kindness and to be less selfish. Practice those things now. And you don't have to be in a relationship to do that. Practice those with your neighbor. Like, work and build up those muscles that you're going to need to depend on when you're in a relationship, and start that now.
Yeah, I love that. And I like what you said in the beginning about enjoying the phase of life that you're in. I think if I could go back and tell my college self, like, enjoy this time and enjoy the dating time. That's special. It's really fun. And don't wait until you have kids to really feel like you're an adult and like life is really good. Just enjoy the phase that you're in, because life goes by really fast. So enjoy where you are.
That's good.
If I could go back 10 years, tell myself something, it is to value church, because the guy to girl ratio is always 1 to 5.
Oh my gosh, true.
Am I right? Am I right? Yeah. Listen, shoot your shot. Where else would you want to meet somebody? It's safe, right? Like, nobody's drunk yet. Nobody's, you know what I'm saying? Well, maybe some of you need a drink right now to loosen up, but listen, shoot your shot. 1 to 5 ratio.
That's great advice. So I want to give a little piece of advice because I can. So for me, it's really cool sitting up here because I've told some of you guys this tonight. This is just like a really crazy moment for me. I remembered earlier this week that 8 years ago, I did not want to be on staff at a church. I never knew that my life would bring me to being in full-time ministry. And my friend invited me here to come and see an author speak. And so I came, and he spoke like all about relationships and all about dating. And I sat over in that corner over there, and I'll never forget, like, I felt like he was looking exactly at me. And he said something that really was super profound and changed my life. He said, be careful who you date and who you're in a relationship with, because it has the potential to change the will of God for your life. And in that moment, it just like changed my life. And that to me just speaks to me in such a way. It's just like this full circle moment. And it just really validates for me something that I wish that I would have gone back and that I could have told myself at a younger age. That I just need to calm down, because like God, if he cares about like me coming to see an author and him speaking to me in a crowd, if he cares about what job I'm working, if he cares about who my roommates are, if he cares about like where I live and what I'm doing and all that stuff, how much more does he care about that person who is going to impact the rest of your life? Like, he cares about that. And I can speak from confidence, and I know that God cares about that so deeply for every single one of you guys. So if you are in a relationship, he cares about that, and he cares about what's happening in that. If you're single, he cares about your relationship status down the road, and he has not forgotten you, and it's not just like something that he's forgotten or something that he hasn't planned. So he knows exactly what's going to happen in your future, and there are a lot of moments and a lot of days where I forget that. but he hasn't. So we can take hope in that. So that being said, let's give it up for this awesome panel. If you guys have any questions for them, feel free to go up and talk to them later. We're going to have a pizza after party in a little bit. Sorry it's getting late on a school night, but what we're going to do right now is we're going to break up into groups of 4 or 5. You guys got a number as you were entering the room. And if you could find some people around you that you don't really know, like if you have some friends beside you that haven't, go branch out a little bit. This space is about meeting new people, making new friends, making new connections. So find like 4 or 5 people that have the same number as you. And we're going to have some questions up on the screen. And I'm going to come back up in just a few minutes. And I'll tell you when the pizza's ready and all that stuff. So for the next few minutes, group up with people, talk, get to know people. And then I'll come back up in just a minute. So thank you guys.